There we
There we
go.
go.
There we go. We made it. Is that my walk-off song? Am I
Walk on.
AC/DC?
Yeah, walk on song.
The walk-on song. I love AC/DC, man. That was like,
I had a feeling you would. I don't know why.
well, if I think back to all those mixes I used to make on cassette tape for my 1984 Subaru GL when I was in high school, AC/DC, that was part of it, man.
No, those mixtapes are a blast from the past. I was cleaning out my basement as part of this quarantine, stuff, right? And I found this whole pile of CDs and like binders of CDs. And granted, we had mixtapes in high school, and then in college we were burning CDs, and I found all these like mixed CDs that were just, oh my God, brought so many memories back. It's fun. It's fun to go through all that stuff.
I used to have the boombox, right? And the only way you can record something, I'm dating myself now, the only way you can record something is if you heard it on the freaking radio, right?
Yes.
So you'd be like,
you'd
be like, oh my God, Def Leppard's coming up. I gotta keep my finger on the play record, like simultaneous, right?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they'd have some jackass DJ like talking over the beginning of the song. You'd be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make this epic mix.
Yeah, no, I definitely was there too. So welcome to Edutainment Tonight. And for those of you watching, this is Coach Jeff Ritter from Make the Turn Performance, Make the Turn Golf. He's amazing. He's a good friend of mine from a bunch of years now. And I'm trying to remember the first year that we met. Probably was maybe 2000 and I'm going to say 12 or 13. I definitely saw you present kind of on around that time frame. That seems about right. And then, was always impressed by you as a presenter. That's, I think, the first time, I saw you was in that light and knew of you as a coach, and followed your journey for a while until, there was an opportunity to potentially actually work with you out in Pebble. It didn't transpire, and you went out there, and we just kept in touch since. So it's been great having you as a friend, an ear, a mentor, a role model. And I think if you're out there and you don't know who Jeff is, you 100% need to obviously look him up and listen to all of his coaching bits on Instagram and on his website and on YouTube, because Jeff, honestly, you're really, really, really gifted in so many different ways, and it's really fun to watch it. So that's my intro to you. Hopefully
that's the nicest damn intro I ever could have had. It's there's
one other thing I do want to say before I let you take the reins here and do some more intro on yourself is, to me, you are the Tony Robbins of golf instruction. I don't know if I've ever said that to you, but that's how I think of you. Certain people kind of have their niches, and I feel like you not only have the skills as a golf instructor, the technical skills, but you really do present coaching. You come across as a fully well-rounded coach, partially because that's how you built your programs. But I just think you are just a storyteller, and you know how to talk to people, and it's just fun to watch the snippets that you share. And I've been able to obviously see you a little bit live here and there as well, but how you coach people and how you motivate people out in golf, but then outside of golf, like motivate them as a person to be better. So that's, I think, why I say Tony Robbins, because he's obviously that motivational speaker, and I kind of feel like you definitely channel that. And I don't know if you try. So that's where I'm going to kind of open it up, is I want you to tell people watching a little bit about your journey and how you got to this point where that's now truly a specialty and a skill set that you have that I don't think a lot of other people in this industry have. So take it away. Take it away. Jeff.
Where do I even start? Well, I grew up the son of a PGA professional, just outside of Philadelphia area, Lancaster, PA. Little tidbit of information, Jim Furyk was on my high school golf team, so really cool to be able to see him with his career and whatnot. But at a very young age, I just got really jazzed about coaching golf. My dad had all the VHS tapes and, probably the 5 or 10 golf books back then that were deemed to be relevant books. And I just started digging in and trying to really learn more about the swing and how to coach, but also for me personally, how to play. Back then, when I was in high school in the late 80s, like there wasn't a lot of coaching around my hometown, you know, and my dad was a club pro, but he really didn't do a lot of coaching either. So it was like, you know, hey dad, can you watch me hit some balls? And he would watch me hit a few and he'd be like, well, just, you know, just keep doing what you're doing, or it looks great, or play your way through it, or, you know,
Yeah.
go to the first tee, you know, stop standing over these range balls. So I
Well, I
had to kind
guess
of like,
Jim Furyk's coach really was his dad, right? So there was not like another pro that he was
no,
like being coached by.
no, there was
Interesting.
really nothing around that area that I could sort of, you know, lean on for support, if you will. So, you know, every month it was Golf Digest. That was the big thing. There was no internet, there was no YouTube, there was no
Yeah.
Golf Channel. So, you know, basically the coaches that were in Golf Digest magazine, they were like the whole world of golf. It was, you know, Peter Costas and, you know, Jim Flick and Bob Toski. And every month I would just wait for Golf Digest to show up and I would like rip the pages out of the magazine and I would grab like my ruler, straight edge, and I would grab a, you know, a Sharpie and like, you know, draw lines and put them in 3-ring binders and have like little sticky notes with like questions about the swing. And
Yep.
that's how it all began. So, you know, as a kid, I would play golf with the members a lot. The club we were at was a private club, and they treated us like we were members, even though my dad worked there as an employee. And eventually, because you're better than all the members, which isn't that hard, they start asking you questions. You know, can you help me get out of the bunker or whatever? And you know, unbeknownst to my father, I started building a little lesson business at 16 years old at our little home club. And my dad would be like, I saw you up there with Bob Regan for like an hour and a half. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm helping him fix his hook. And my dad's like,
Wow.
well, you know, are they paying you anything? I was like, no. He goes, well, they should pay you something. So I actually literally created a little lesson program at 16 years old. And
Wow.
when Jim Furyk is on your high school golf team and you're nowhere near playing at his level, and everyone in town doesn't think that Jim's going to be a star athlete.
Right.
When you grow up in a small town, it's like it's different from a big city environment. It's like you have a good young, you know, football player, baseball player, soccer player, golfer. You know, people don't think in this like, you know, worldly mindset of this person's going to be like the next Fred Couples or Greg Norman or whatever, you know.
Right.
So when you have someone like that, and then you are like miles behind them in terms of skill, you go, well, maybe I'm not going to play for a living, but I love this game, so maybe coaching is my thing. So fast forward, I went to college at New Mexico State University in the PGM program, and Martin Chuck and I, who a lot of people know from Instagram, Tour Striker Golf, he and I went to college together, and I was just really struggling with my golf game. And he said to me, you need to go see Mike LeBove up in Scottsdale. And I was like, who's Mike LeBove? And he hands me Golf Digest, and there's Mike LeBove on the cover of Golf Digest. And I was like, oh my God, these are all my heroes. So I drove 6 hours to Phoenix to get a golf lesson. And I would say it's probably the first great golf lesson that I ever had because, you know, as players, we have a certain expectation for what kind of results we're going to get out of a lesson. And of course, those expectations are driven by our past conditioning, right? So when you go to a golf lesson and you don't get better at all, or if you just get a little bit better, you go, well, I feel like I'm talented. I feel like I'm coordinated. I'm doing what this person wants me to do. And this is my result. So maybe these gains are just tiny incremental gains. So I go up to see Mike LeBove, and this is literally like, I was ready to quit the game. Like clubs in the closet. I'm just drinking beer, you know, in college. You know, I'd lost myself as a player. And that was really challenging because my entire identity as a human being was around being a golfer and
Yeah.
being a good golfer, right? So when you start to see that slip from an ego-based perspective, it's really challenging because you start to think, well, maybe I was never really that good to begin with, you know? So I go see Mike, and within 10 minutes, I was hitting the ball better than I'd ever hit it in my entire life. And Erica, like literally on the lesson tee, I started to like well up like with tears because that's the first time that I realized that I wasn't the problem. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't have the right information.
Right.
So Mike became a huge mentor of mine. When I signed up for this golf lesson with him, I said, I want, you know, a half-hour lesson, then I want a half hour just to ask you questions as to like how you do what you do. And I took that 3-ring binder that I had been like building since I was in high school, and I like literally threw it up on the table at the restaurant. And he was like, holy shit, like what is that? I'm like, well, these are my questions. You know?
It's like we're gonna
He's
need
like,
More than half an hour.
Yeah. So he answered each and every single question and was so gracious. And then he invites me to his office. And this is 1990. So I'm a freshman in college, 18, 19 years old. And he picks up his phone and he calls Hank Haney, right? And he goes, Hank, I got a guy you need to meet. And then I was on an airplane to Texas to meet Hank Haney.
Wow.
Right, which I never did. He canceled I flew the whole way there. He canceled our appointment. I ended up meeting with someone on the staff, which is totally fine. You know, the universe works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
But the whole reason I tell the story is that was the moment that I was validated, you know, in my path, in my pursuit. And Mike started inviting me to watch Golf Digest schools anytime I wanted. He goes, anytime you want to come up and watch me teach, you know, you can do that. I'm like, oh, you just made a big mistake. because I would drive 6 hours every single month up to Scottsdale, and I would sit on the back of the lesson tee at Golf Digest schools, and I would try and be like Mike. And the thing that Mike was really great at was getting an immediate, exciting result. That was like, you know, rocking people's world. Like, they didn't just show up there getting a little bit better. They were just like, oh my God, I never even knew I could hit one like that.
Yeah.
So having Mike as a mentor really changed my mindset relative to the prospect for not only improvement, but how much someone could improve. I felt it in my own game. And then as I started getting into coaching, I was like, you know what, when someone shows up in my lesson tee, I'm going to rock their world, right? They're going to show up expecting X and wait till they see frickin' Y, right? And the thing that I realized is that, and you talk about, you know, how I approach teaching and learning, the thing that I realized is that nothing good or bad ever happens on a golf course. And I say that like lesson number one, and people like laugh like, oh, well, you should see me tee off, or you should see me putt. I'm like, well, no. If you're topping it, hooking it, slicing it, shanking it, or missing it, you're doing everything perfect to get those results.
Right.
Right. The thing is that as a human being, we got this thing called an ego. And our ego goes, well, I don't like it when it goes over there. And I don't like it when it goes over there. But there's nothing wrong with the action.
Right.
It's just that it's not meeting our expectation. Right. So if you want a different result, and this is what I share with all my students, then you just got to do something different.
Yeah.
Right. Anything that you do differently is going to create a different result. Anything. I, as your coach, I'm just the master of differences. Right. So I have, you know, the fast track. Right.
Your new hashtag.
Master of differences. So I have the differences unique to you as a player that are going to give you the ball flight and contact in line with what makes your ego excited, right? So when people show up for a golf lesson, they go, well, how long is it going to take for me to get better? I go, let's do it right now. Yeah. And I'm not bullshitting. It's not like 6 lessons or 10 lessons or the whole damn summer, right? If I'm going to be right with my diagnosis, right, which I'm going to be, right, and you as the student are willing to follow my lead and do something different, we're going to get a different result right now. And it could be 1 swing, 2 swings, but it's going to happen right now. Now, demonstration of a skill is different from ownership of a skill, right? Ownership takes patience, will, and discipline. But when someone shows up in my lesson tee, you know, I expect that we're going to see something that is exciting, right? And that moment right there is what I call the moment that we reveal possibility. If someone comes in expecting one thing, they go, wait a minute, you mean I can hit it like that? Hell yeah, you can. Well, now how much more does that person want to play golf? Yeah. Well, they want to invest a lot more into it because they can actually see that the effort they put in is going somewhere, and not just somewhere that's sort of fun or better than, you know, going to the mall. It's somewhere that's exciting, right? And the thing is that, you know, the lessons.
It's a positive experience. It takes the pressure off of a golfer going to a lesson feeling like I'm broken, fix me. It's just, you're not broken. It's like reframing it, which is, again, so smart. And there's some really talented coaches out there that I've heard, you know, that echo this. It's like such a great way of approaching coaching somebody is it's doing something different. It's not better or worse, right?
That's right.
It's so important. I love that.
It just is, right?
Right.
So I always felt like, you know, in golf and coaching golf, I mean, there's obviously this track you take as a coach to develop a certain degree of skill or knowledge to be able to properly evaluate or diagnose someone so that the direction that you're moving is in a positive direction, or the direction that they want to go, right? So obviously as a coach, you have to have the right skill set for evaluation, right? But I feel like the farther you get into coaching, I mean, that's like, a 5-minute process at most, right? So you as a talented coach, I mean, you could be, hanging out, sipping on a cup of coffee, watching your next student make a few swings in the distance. And from 50 yards away, you can see a behavioral pattern that's going to lend to a certain kind of ball flight. I mean, there's only two kinds of golfers: people that slice it too much, people that hook it too much. Well, I guess maybe a third kind: people that don't hit it anywhere, right? That's all you got, right? So people are always trying to manage, right, the direction of their shots and then maximize the distance on their shots. But there's only so many things a golfer can do that are going to get them away from, achieving those basic goals. So you see someone from 100 yards away, then you walk up close, you ask them a couple of questions, you see the ball fly, you see how their body language acts, you put them on film or some other device that collects information. It could be radar, it could be 3D, but within a few minutes, like as a coach, we got it. We got the plan, right?
Right.
So knowing what to do, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
How to do it,
yeah,
that's where the real magic in coaching takes shape. So what a coach does for players, if someone's watching this and they go, well, I don't want to take golf lessons. Well, a coach is there to take you somewhere that you probably can't go on your own, or you're not likely to go on your own, because a coach stretches your imagination, a coach stretches your sensation, a coach challenges you in so many ways. And that's why, as someone who has a life in coaching, I get coached in everything I do, even if I feel like I'm okay at it, whether it's guitar or snowboarding or whatever. I'm like,
I was going to say, you recently, since moving to Oregon, didn't you take snowboarding lessons?
I did.
Work with somebody? Yeah.
I did. I grew up as a skier in the Northeast, which is the worst skiing ever. Pennsylvania powder, we used to call it, which is basically just ice. Ice. And then you have like a 900-foot vertical. That would be like a big mountain. And then you got 45-second run down and then a 45-minute wait in line, right? And it's funny because when I was in high school, my dream was to live in a ski town and be like a skier in the winter, or maybe be like a ski instructor in the winter. And then in the golf season in the summer, I would do that. And that would be like my whole life. But, people like us, we live in warm weather places generally. And I lived in Arizona, and, Martin, Chuck, and I had an academy studio that we operated our business out of. We were there for a long time. And then I went to Pebble Beach, and, I lived in Palm Springs. But I never lived up in, the Northwest. And I just came up here to Bend, Oregon, not really looking for a job opportunity. I just came up here to have a trip and see the place. And after I came up here, I thought, what do I got to do to live there? Yeah. And I created this relationship with the Pronghorn Resort, which is a fantastic facility. We've got a lodge. We've got 36 holes, a Nicholas and a Fazio design course. I've got a teaching studio, which I'm sitting in right now, which is about 1,000 square feet. And this is our new home. So when I came up here, I said, I'm going to get back into winter sports, but I didn't have an emotional connection to skiing anymore, because from the age of, 18 or 19 till, age of 46, 2 years ago, I didn't really do anything winter sport wise. So I came up here and I go, I'm going to go snowboarding. It seems like the cool thing to do. And I just sort of approached it from the perspective of learning how to snowboard the way that I would learn how to play golf, or the way that I would coach someone to play golf. So, basically the elements of, developing a skill, they're the same regardless of what you do. And last year I rode 51 days. Wow. And I really got the bug. And this year I had 38 days in before they closed the mountain. But
I was going to ask you about that. So everything was closed since March or whatever, mid-March?
Everything was closed, yeah.
That's
and I missed the first half of the season because I was in Australia and New Zealand coaching for about a month over there. The last haircut I got was in Melbourne, Australia at the President's Cup. Right. And
it's looking good. You got some flow going.
Well, I mean, just for this, just so you know, I'm not turning sideways, right? I kind of like threw it back behind my head a little bit here. And the other day, it was so out of control. I grabbed this rubber band and I literally, like, for the first time in my life, I put it into like a ponytail. Right?
Oh my God.
And I did this at home with my partner, Kate, and it was sort of like, I'm going to see how focused she is or not on like my existence, in our space. And I had a ponytail for like 12 straight hours, and I was like washing dishes in front of her, and like we're in the car together, and I'm like throwing it in her face, and Not once did she mention that I had this ridiculous thing hanging off the back of my head. And literally, like, we turn on Netflix at night and she goes, "Do you have a ponytail?" I'm like, finally, finally, you looked in my direction. You know, I had your attention and you realized that something hilarious and ridiculous was hanging off.
Well,
So anyway,
it's a strange time, Jeff. You can't.
yeah. So I got
Can't blame her.
I got the Coming to America haircut. Do you remember Coming to America? Well, you have to. That's your part of the country, right? So if people don't, I mean, do she even talk about this? But like, so the Coming to America, Eddie Murphy, right? Comes from Zamunda to Queens, and he's got this thing hanging off, this tail hanging off the back of his head. It's like this long, and it was like his hair from birth, and it's like a sacred thing in this ridiculous movie. And he's at this Queens barbershop, and he goes to the barber like, "Just make it nice and neat." And the guy looks at it, goes, "Snip. That'll be $8." That was my haircut. I'm like, "Can you tighten this up?" And she's like, "Sure. That'll be $8."
You're good. Oh gosh, a little different down there.
So that's what happened.
Oh my
But to get back to our discussion, you know, how we go about learning and improving, I think that's the real secret. And I think there's a lot of golfers out there that are trying to practice with maybe half of the information. Right? So their information is correct, but they don't have the whole story. So they end up being lost or confused by ball flights that might make it look like they're getting worse when they're actually getting closer to hitting the shot that they want.
Yes.
And I also feel like they don't understand how to change the environment so that you can increase the level of awareness that allows you to actually change your behavior. And one of the things that I developed with our Make the Turn program, I wouldn't say I developed it. I basically thought about why I did what I did in a golf lesson that was effective. And all this stuff just comes from watching people like Mike and watching other great coaches. And when you watch really proficient people in their craft deliver these fantastic golf lessons and these fantastic experiences and results, you start to try and just model what they're doing.
Yeah.
But along the way, you might not really understand what you're doing or why. You just know that it works. So I created this little 4-step learning formula that we use for all of our coaching programs. And step number 1 is awareness, right? So being able to identify your pattern. Another word for pattern is just a behavior. So everyone has a behavior in terms of how we walk and talk and speak and, you know, chew with our mouth open or closed. You know, those are just behaviors. But in order to be different from what you are, you have to have an awareness of what you are.
Right.
So step number 1 is the did you know phase. Like, did you know you hit the ball off the heel, or you hit the ball off the toe, or you hit this far behind it, or did you know your ball does X, Y, or Z? And the thing is, most people don't know because they're not looking at the game from the coach's perspective.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
like
they're
you
too
and I,
attached to it. They're too close to it, or they just don't understand. Yeah.
And of course, they don't have a high enough performance IQ to recognize subtle nuances and differences. You know, like you or I, we could be turned the other direction and someone can hit a ball off the toe and you know it's off the toe. You don't even have to see it or look on some device that says, "Oh, we hit off the toe." I can hear it's off the toe. But, you know, the recreational player doesn't have, you know, their senses tuned to that degree because they're recreational players. So step number 1 is, you know, identify the pattern. Did you know? And then from there, we try and strengthen the pillar, right? So the pillar, those would be the foundational elements for success. And of course, you know, there's a set of foundational elements for ball striking. There's foundational elements for, you know, pitching, chipping, sand, and then putting, and then how we think and how we eat and how we take care of our bodies. But there's certain things that are going to be sort of like your foundational starting points that people need to understand from an education-based perspective. So they go, okay, well, this is where I was, and then here are my alternatives to be different, and this is why they're going to get me excited, right? And then step number 3 is what I call making your move, and that's where you are shifting from pattern A to pattern B. And the things that I or we do as coaches to help people through that process, I think that's the most critical step to actually getting the result. Yeah. Knowing who we are first is a quick thing. Saying, hey, this is how we'd like to be different, that's a quick thing. Now let's dive in and actually get this result. And that's where the real magic in coaching, I think takes place. And that's what I love about coaching is that opportunity to send someone away where they get in their car and they're like, damn, I need to play some more golf, right? Because this person helped me see how good I could really be through this process. And then the final step is what I call perseverance, or the no failure zone, where we start to no longer look at outcomes as good or bad. They're only opportunities that have the chance to learn something from them, or the opportunity to create an adjustment, which creates an adjustment in the flight. So I was talking to a student, well, just this morning, and I said, you know, when you're on the practice tee, I want you to think of it as a lab, like a science lab, science class. And a lab is a place for mindful experimentation. It's not a place for guessing, right? It's a place for mindful experimentation. So if you think about how a scientist would approach, you know, trying to prove a hypothesis,
Right.
well, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, is melting, fizzling, exploding, right? And they don't get all like upset or pissed off or frustrated with it. They're just trying to see some evidence that they're moving in the right direction. Like, oh, I tested this. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, we're going to make a little adjustment here. We're going to make a little adjustment here. So I think when golfers understand the process, you know, within an environment where the coach is framing that process, then they really become empowered to go off on their own and not be so emotionally affected by outcomes that, you know, are not what they're trying to produce.
And if we go with that analogy, you know, a lot of times golfers are out there hypothesizing about the wrong thing, right? Like they're just totally in the wrong department. And so just to go get a lesson and have your coach help you confirm what the experiment needs to be on, then you can like play within the parameters of that, you know, like you said, a little bit more of this, a little less of this. But if they're, you know, doing the wrong experiment, maybe they'll learn something, maybe they won't, right?
That's right. That's right. You got to have a certain degree of clarity in your purpose, and understand why you are the way you are, and then how you can be different and what kind of result that's going to produce. And it's just such a big challenge. And the thing is, you know, everyone's got a phone, right? Everyone's watching this is watching it on a phone. So we all have the ability to film ourselves, right? Either we're filming ourselves or a buddy's going to hold up the phone. But the thing that people need to understand that are watching this is that the stuff that you see on video and the stuff that your friends see sort of popping out as sort of like this anomaly of like, oh, I stand up, or I fold up my arms, or I hit off my back foot. You know, the stuff that you see is never the problem.
Right.
It's the effect of the problem. It's your compensation for the problem. And the stuff that really looks kind of crazy might be the one or two things that are actually giving you a chance to even hit the ball to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think that the average person, you know, they're good at seeing the obvious, but they're not understanding that obvious representation of being out of the norm, if you will, is really not the problem at all. The problem lies somewhere else, and the stuff you see is the response to it.
I love that. That's really well said. Not surprisingly so by you. So touch a little bit on, I have some fun stuff I want to get into
All right.
in a few minutes, but I still want to know like a little bit more. I mean, you have great presentation skills. Is that just practice? Is it because you've been modeling after these good coaches, or has there been other training, or, you know, maybe who else are you following, or a team of coaches that you've worked with like on your own, or other outside, you know, training that you've done, or self-education that you've done to like just become the, you know, good communicator and presenter that you are?
Yeah, when I got my first real opportunity in coaching, I was working for Dave Pelz down at PGA West in La Quinta, California, back in 1995, and we had a director of education, and she basically said, "These are the presentations you need to know for our golf schools, and I want you to film yourself presenting. And I don't care if you know, trip over your words or swallow your tongue or start and stop, you know, over and over again. I just need to make sure that I hear out of your mouth the basic points from each presentation. Like, this is the ball position. This is like the level of tension, whatever like Dave wanted in that presentation.
Very interesting.
What are the bullet points?" And so I would, you know, go out and I would put on this video, and these presentations in the golf school were like 15-minute presentations, right? And if I were to screw up on camera, I would just start all over. I would start all over because I wanted to separate myself from the other young coaches that were sort of brought into the fold a little bit. I wanted them to know that I cared about being there. I wanted to do a good job. So I didn't hand in my tapes with any mistakes at all. So sometimes I would do the same presentation 20, 30 times and just keep on stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting. So I got better, in that capacity.
Practice, yeah.
And then when I was living in Arizona, running my academy there, it was about 2007. And that's when I first started using YouTube to post instructional videos. But back then, there wasn't any golf instruction information on YouTube. It was like,
Right.
it was like stupid human tricks and people trying to, blow up mailboxes. And like,
Yeah.
it was like, well, what is this thing YouTube anyway, But I had a client of mine that said, you should put videos up on YouTube. So in between lessons, if I had someone cancel or if I had a 30-minute break, I would just pop on the camera and I would post a video. And I would wake up in the morning, I'd be like, oh my God, 5,000 people saw this thing last night. And that really encouraged me to do more and more YouTube. And because I was living in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and a lot of people travel there for many reasons, not just golf or vacation, but business, I would literally have people like landing on the runway, calling me going, oh my gosh, I just realized that you're that guy on YouTube. Do you have availability for a lesson?
Wow.
So, in coaching, we're sort of conditioned to say, well, our clientele is 25 miles around us. This is like our, where we put our flag, and this is where we try and draw our student base from. But I started getting clients from all over the world that were coming out in part to possibly see me, if not to make me part of their vacation. And it really got me thinking differently about, the power we have as coaches to help people in a lot of different ways. And some of those ways aren't always directly, sitting in front of us. So I started doing a lot of that stuff. I started doing stuff for Fox Sports, and then Golf Digest started inviting me to do more video projects because if you can speak on camera, they feel like it makes their job a little bit easier. That turned into some Golf Channel stuff. And then off of that, I started having the opportunity to do more speaking. I went to Thailand and did some stuff in Bangkok with Cameron McCormick and James Seekman, and huge stage. And, I was really getting out of my comfort zone. But as it relates to a piece of information that, can be helpful to you or the listeners, I had a good friend of mine, his name's David Jack, and he was the health advisor for the Katie Couric show. So he was getting on TV and, with Katie, and this is how you work out, and this is how you do this, and how you do that. And he contacted me the day before I was going to fly to Thailand, because this is when Spieth was just like on fire. I mean, Jordan had just won the Masters, and he and Cameron, their star was like rising fast. And James Seekman, if the folks here don't know James, James coaches like a ridiculous number of tour players and short game stuff. So like for me, at that time, I was like the third wheel. I was like nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go. Like I got to go to Thailand and present with these guys. Like, I hope I don't disappoint anybody. So my friend David Jack contacted me the night before, and David goes, hey, I know you got this massive thing. It's probably the biggest audience you've ever spoken to, and I know you've got some colleagues who are presenting that might make you nervous. But the thing I want you to remember when you get on stage, it's not about you, right? When we get nervous public speaking, it's because we're wondering how we're doing. Like, am I doing okay? Am I totally bombing? Like, what does the person in the third row think about, whether or not I'm like, on fire or I'm sucking this up, And that was like a very powerful, disarming moment where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm on stage because I have something of value to share, right? So if I make this entire presentation about you, like, how can I'm here to help you, right?
Yeah.
And he said to me at the end of our conversation, he goes, you can never be nervous in the act of service.
Oh, I like that.
Right? So if anyone's out there and they've got to give a presentation, whether it's in front of golfers or business leaders or, people in their hometown, or even if it's like a high school project and they're nervous, just remember, like, we all have a gift, which is the information we have to share in helping other people.
Yeah.
And if you always approach it from, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Your focus is going to be on service, not anything that's ego based relative to how you do it.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you've been asked to speak and people know that you have an expertise in something, just sharing what you know usually makes it easier to talk about, as opposed to, it's harder to talk about something or prepare for something if you don't really know the subject matter. But if you know it and you own it, like, just let it go, right?
And you got to be real too. I mean, empathy is so important, not only in coaching, but also public speaking, because like, if you are, the thing that I hate about motivational speaking is motivation is fleeting. Like you pay some money to see this person up on a pedestal, and you're there because you think that he or she has done something, spectacular or amazing, where if you could be more like them, then maybe you would be more successful, personally, financially, or whatever. That's just the nature of being on the stage versus being in the audience.
Right.
But the thing that I always try and do with my students and also anyone that I'm speaking with is I let them know that, I have moments of doubt, right, relative to who I am and where I'm going in this life. And these are the ways I've worked on getting through those moments, whether it be in my career path or my personal life. And success is not a straight line. When I'm speaking with coaches, I'm like, listen, I worked for Dave Pelz in 1995. I went from Dave Pelz to working for Golf Digest Schools in 1997. And in 1998, I was standing in 6 inches of snow in Trenton, New Jersey, filling out my unemployment forms, right? And it's because the Golf Digest facility that we were working at eventually was shut down because they weren't going to expand this particular project to multiple properties. There weren't any other places that they could position myself and the other coaches. So they said, you're unemployed.
Right.
And that was like a huge, like, oh no, like, wait a minute. Like, what am I doing now? And I hung out in my apartment for like 3 or 4 months because it was the middle of winter. I sat there in my sweatpants and I watched TV and, ate bad food. And like, I was like, wait a minute. I was supposed to be like in the golf business, Golf Digest, cover the magazine one day, maybe
What
like
happened?
on a boat.
Right.
What happened? And then I went down to the PGA show with a backpack full of like resumes. And I was just like, I wish I could go back now and see like how frantic I would be running around the show floor, right? But I was like cornering like the world's best coaches. Like I would find like Butch Harmon and be like, hey, Mr. Harmon, how you doing? Sorry, I don't, this is like, here's, oh, there's Jim McClain. Hang on a second. You're like, hey, Jim, no, I'm not stalking you. I really want to work for you. So I handed out all these resumes, and one top coach, not one of those two guys, but one top coach who was really well known, I won't share any names, he said, I want you to be my director of instruction. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to get out of this unemployment nightmare, and I'm going to leave New Jersey. I was going to go to, like Southern California, and be able to do something amazing with this coach. Well, I fly out there, I meet with this guy, I put like literally all of my savings down on an apartment in Southern California. Super expensive, but I needed a place to live. I go back to New Jersey, start getting all my affairs in order. I never heard from that coach again, right? I called his office every day for 3 months. And finally, someone picked up and said, we're so sorry, there's no longer a position available. And it wasn't nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
They, ran into some hard times. They didn't open on time or whatever. But you can see how you can look at someone who's maybe doing some positive things in coaching, and maybe you're hitting some roadblocks in your own career path, and you just got to realize that's the norm in this business. And as it relates to your Tony Robbins comments, if you will, this was about the time that I started hooking up with a mental toughness coach, a guy who was working with pro athletes and companies, and he and I shared, affection for the same NFL football team. So we became friends as well. But he really started challenging me to challenge the way that I was thinking relative to the results I was getting in my life path. And the things that we fall in love with personally, these are the things that also kind of find their way to the lesson team. And that's when mindset started becoming such a big part of who I am and what I do in coaching, because I was seeing the results in my own life, and I was so excited to share these ideas with other golfers in my sphere of influence. And then if they wanted help beyond that, then of course I was always an open book. And one of the things that is a great lesson I'll share with you, which is something that is, I think, pretty widely debated, or maybe it's not that debated. I think there's a consensus on this, and I don't believe that consensus to be true. And it's based on this question of, where does confidence come from, right? So if you were to ask a lot of coaches, where does confidence come from? Or you ask a player, where does confidence come from? They would say, well, from seeing evidence of success. Oh, I need to practice so that I can see proficiency. And once I see proficiency, I can feel confident. Well, the thing is that confidence is an emotional state, right? And all emotional states can only come from one place, and that's our thinking. So that means that right now, void of any evidence of success or proficiency, I, you, or anybody else, through their thinking, can exude the emotional state that we know as confidence.
Sure. That's sort of
So,
NLP, some NLP stuff too, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the thing is like, if you have confidence now through your thinking,
Right.
wouldn't that increase the likelihood of getting that result that you want eventually?
Right.
Right? In sport, life or other. And one of our little mantras is, you know, create the state, don't wait. Like, don't wait for a damn putt to go in the hole before you believe that you can be a good putter. You believe that you are a good putter.
Right.
Instead, just decide that you're a good putter and then go out there, and then that decision-making process that creates a certain emotional vibe will give you more access to your best stuff. And that's all we're trying to do through mental toughness thinking in sports, is put ourselves in an emotional state where we have more access to our gifts.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Well,
So
good. What's next?
with that
Now what?
said, if you're projecting a certain emotion and a feeling about yourself and how you want, you know, let's just say the future to be, or I don't know what kind of vibe you want moving forward. Could you project, you know, where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? You know, is that forcing it? Like, how do you
No.
view setting a vision for the future and what you wanted to do?
Well, so the first thing you have to do is you have to really figure out authentically what your heart is most attached to, right? So the thing is that, you know, we talked about conditioning and expectation relative to hitting golf shots. Well, we have equal conditioning relative to expectation in our life's path or journey as well. So what we need to be able to do is strip these limitations, stretch our imagination, and get connected with what we really want, not with what we think that we deserve or what we're capable of. So one of the things that this mental toughness coach did with me is he had me sit down with like a bunch of sheets of legal paper, right? And we worked on a Tony Robbins exercise
Hey.
known as the Genie List,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And the Genie List is all about reimagining how life could be, right? So basically, you would create, this would be good for you, right? So you can do this exercise, and people at home can do this exercise.
Okay.
Take a legal pad and then create 4 different categories: personal, professional, family, and other. And then go find a quiet place and then go into that room and spend 1 or 2 hours and operate under this caveat. Imagine that you have your own personal genie that holds infinite levels of possibility and an unlimited number of wishes, right? So if you could have, be, or do whatever you wanted without restriction, what would those things be? And then feverishly scribble all of those answers within each category, right? And it's supposed to be outlandish. It's supposed to be rooted in fantasy. But what you'll find after you complete that list, you'll see things that you wrote down that perhaps you expressed to yourself for maybe the first time ever. Or you maybe see some things that were dreams or desires in the past that you suppressed because you didn't believe that you deserved to achieve them, right? So that's really important, is getting authentic with what you really want versus what you think you deserve to have or you're capable of achieving. And then from there, I'm all about creating upgrades. And we're conditioned in life to set goals, right? I think when you set a goal, you're leaving open the possibility of not. When I set a goal, I'm basically saying that this is where I want to go, and if I get 3/4 of the way there, well, look how far I've come, right? So when you set a goal, it leaves open the possibility that it might not happen. So I would try and upgrade a goal, and I would shift it into a decision, right?
Yeah.
So a decision eliminates all doubt. So like if you think about how this series of phrases might work. My goal is to lose 15 pounds. My goal is to make a 6-figure income. My goal is to break 80, right? So now we'll shift it. I'm losing 15 pounds. I'm making 6 figures, and God damn it, I'm breaking 80, right? Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different energy behind the pursuit. So, I mean, everything I do in coaching is to try and give people these little tools to not only see golf differently, but also to see life differently. And when people ask me about Make the Turn, Make the Turn is really a compilation of all these experiences and influences I've had in my life. I've had coaching influences with people like Michael LeBeau. I've had mindset influences with people like Chris Doris, who I'm sharing with you here, the Genie List exercise he had me do. I've had similar experiences with people in fitness and nutrition. And these things became so exciting to me. And I started seeing this progress in my life. I said, well, I want to share these lessons with other people. And in the pursuit of shooting lower scores, there are so many lessons inherent within that process that not only help us be better on the golf course, but they help us be better off the golf course. And for me, like, golf is the vehicle. Golf is the thing that has brought all of us together in this forum right here. But when you use the game effectively, you can use the lessons inherent within to help you have life be the way you want it to be. And that's what I love most about coaching and connecting with people.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how you can just bring it all together. It's great. It's how it should be. How often do you get to touch in on this with people in a normal 1 hour lesson? I mean, does it take getting to know that person over a series of lessons? Is it maybe within that first calendar year that you start like just peeling away the layers of the onion? Or are you able to kind of tackle some of these things sometimes first lesson, first session?
I would say it's all organic, and it happens. It happens pretty much immediately. Like, once you get past that initial diagnosis and game plan and you start getting some balls in the air and moving differently, I mean, there's a lot you can accomplish in an hour-long golf lesson. And that's another thing that I learned from Michael LeBeau, because before I was with Mike, I just assumed that when you went for a golf lesson, you worked on your full swing, or you worked on your putting, or you worked on your chipping. And when you would go see Mike for a lesson, he would be like, all right, so here's what we're doing with our iron game. Now hit a few drivers. Okay, here's your adjustment with your driver. Grab your sandwich. Go ahead and chip me a few. Now pitch me a couple more. All right, this is what you got to do here. Let's hop in the sand. How would you curve one around this tree? Grab your putter. Like, in one lesson, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I felt like I got 10 lessons in one lesson.
Yeah.
And that really showed me the right way, or the effective way, to use an hour of not only my time, but someone else's time.
Right.
Like, I will never help somebody move in the right direction and then lean on my club for 45 minutes. Right. I'm not doing that. Right? It's not fun for me, and it's not of service to them. So it's really cool to be able to help people, like, elevate all these areas of the game really quickly. But within that hour-long time span, there's so many opportunities to get into these little conversations. And all these conversations are really coming off of how they're reacting to the process, right? What they're saying about the process, what they're saying about their game, how their emotional state is changing based on if they're hitting the ball in the center of the club face or not. And I feel like the greatest gift I can give people is the gift of being able to find joy within the struggle.
Right.
And
there's so many life lessons in the game of golf, but then just in the journey of you coaching them and finding those patterns, or maybe the mindset that they have, and being able to change it through the lens of golf, and then making them aware that this is probably something that they're guilty of in their life, is pretty powerful. I'm sure, that's why you excel as a coach, and you're awesome, is because you're able to do that. You're able to, like, link that together for people.
Yeah, I do it as much as I can, and how much they use it, it's up to them. But if I have the opportunity to share something in a positive environment that is going to make them remember the experience in a powerful way, then that's important. I do a lot of storytelling. Michael Hebron, who is a genius relative to learning the game. He always talks about meaningful learning. And there are some stories that I share with my players on a regular basis, which are stories that were shared with me, in coaching, environments when I was a kid, right? And you think about meaningful learning, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm telling a story to this player to help them see a shot or a situation differently that was shared with me 30 plus years ago, then I think that coaching environment that I was in was really effective, right?
Yeah.
So I try and be a storyteller. I try and give them a little bit more, and I try and give them moments of discovery that are completely unforgettable. Because if they don't forget them, then they have the best opportunity to utilize them in get to their destination within this
And
journey of playing
people
the game.
remember stories. They remember stories a lot better, and they remember
Yeah.
analogies, and yeah, it's more relatable to them. So you're that's awesome, man. You answered so many of the questions that I had written down, and I haven't seen too many kind of in the comments. Let me just scroll for a second to see if anybody wrote anything. We just had a lot of waves, and Martin was on a little bit earlier. He sends his love to both of us, and yeah, a lot of familiar names that have popped in and out. I know it's popular time frame right now. A lot of lives are happening, so we've had a lot of people kind of come in and out of our conversation. But I don't know. Is there, I guess, anything? I want to ask like a powerful question, but you've given us so many golden nuggets.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's awesome. I just love hearing you talk. Okay, so let's say this: if you had unlimited funds, $100 million or more, what would you do for the game of golf with that money?
I think with that much money, you got to create more opportunities for any person, regardless of, income, socioeconomic standing, living environment, to have the opportunity to experience the game. And I think that what we're seeing now, I think the PGA of America and so many other organizations that lend their names to golf, I think they're doing that in a powerful way. I think the real challenge is the sustainability behind it. And I think it's really important to not only give anyone access to equipment in a place where they can go, learn how to get the ball up in the air and forward, but to give them access to actually playing golf courses, regardless of where they are, is an important thing. And when I was down at the Northern California section, down at Poppy Hills and Pebble Beach, youth on course, which is kind of an extension or an expansion of what the first tee did. Like the first tee said, hey, let's get more kids into golf, right? And then youth on course is like, how do we get them from the first tee on the golf course? So they created a program where, a facility is only charging $5 for kids that are enrolled in this program to play. And and if that course wants to be able to get the full greens fee, then they just invoice the foundation. So I just thought, like, we need more things like that. It's the kind of game that's always going to have money around it and a certain kind of demographic around it. But that's not the true nature of the game. And I think the more people that can get introduced to it and actually be able to go on the golf course with it and make it a game for a lifetime, the time they spend there, I think, is really valuable. And for me, I'll just say, growing up at a golf course was, I think, one of the most important moments in my my life development, because there weren't a lot of kids at our club. So I had to be able to, coexist and communicate with, people that were, of influence, or people that expected me to behave a certain way. And I just think there's so much you can learn at a golf course, and it's a really hard place to get into a lot of trouble unless you're rolling over carts or knocking out windows, which I've done a couple of times myself. But
oh man, well those
never
are
intentional though.
I need 3 hours for all your stories or more. I need a whole day. Just let the camera roll. Let's just do sort of like a little fun, like rapid fire Q&A, just for some fun favorites and things. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna call this or that. So we'll run down the list. I think I know the answer to the first one. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Yeah. I'm a dog guy. Well, I love all animals, but I'm a dog guy.
Yeah. Beer or wine?
Oh, I'm going to throw a third option. I've actually been partaking in cider lately.
Oh, okay.
Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of hard cider up here, and
okay.
I kind of like it. It's not wine, but it's not quite as heavy as the beer.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere in the middle. It's nice and refreshing. So I'll say cider.
What's the brand we should know about?
The one that I tend to come across. Again, I'm not a expert or connoisseur in anything here. But the one that I normally buy it's called Avid Cider.
Avid. Okay.
Avid Cider Company.
Okay.
But I mean, is it good, or is it better than the next cider? I really don't know.
Yeah, that's okay.
It tastes good. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this. Baseball or football?
No, football.
Yeah. Let's see. Vanilla or chocolate, as in ice cream, cake?
Chocolate.
Chocolate?
Chocolate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mallet or blade?
Oh, mallet.
I'm jumping all around here. Let's see. Do you prefer links or parkland style courses? You've
I
lived
like
all over
link.
the place.
Yeah, I mean, I love links courses. I mean,
Yeah.
links courses traditionally by definition are seaside courses.
Yeah.
I know it's not always that way now, but I just think having the opportunity to play those kinds of landscapes, which are so different from where I grew up,
Yeah.
is pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. Beach or lake?
Well, I used to say the beach when I lived in California, but where I was in California, it's the start of what's known as the Red Triangle, right? And the Red Triangle is where all the sharks are,
Oh
right?
boy.
And I think that the time I spent surfing, hanging out with my buddies, just kind of bobbing up and down on your board, right, with your feet dangling, into the depths below, like my mind would start playing tricks on me, right?
Yeah.
And getting in my way. And when I came up to Oregon and I bought a paddleboard and I'm just like cruising around with my dog in these amazing, pristine lakes, I would paddle out to the middle of the lake. I would lay down on my board, drop my feet in, my dog would be there. And I would just think to myself, there's nothing in here that can get me. Nothing's going to get you. Nothing's going to get you. So,
yeah, right. I hear you.
So I made the shift to
Lake
lakes
life?
based on that premise. Yeah.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I usually don't need the whole wetsuit either. How about if you're on an airplane, window or aisle seat?
Always the aisle seat. I mean, if you pin me into the window, I am climbing over your ass to use the bathroom, right? That's just the way it's going to be, right? So let's
I like
just,
the window because I can like lean against it and sleep.
Yeah, well, you must have the ability to control your bladder because I am up and out with frequency. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Glove or no glove?
Oh, glove for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but not two gloves.
No,
But not two.
I mean,
just
I
one.
just, some people don't wear gloves, so.
What about when you putt? Do you putt with a glove?
No.
No, either do I.
Full swing.
No.
I'm talking about full swing.
Yeah, first.
Coffee or tea?
I actually gave up both about 6 months ago.
What?
Yeah, I've been drinking coffee for a long time.
Yeah.
The way you start your day. But the thing that I was reading about, I just wanted to experiment on, is the fact that when you artificially boost your energy, it can create adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue can affect your energy, adversely, not only now but later in life. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to drink any coffee. And the last coffee I had was before the PGA show.
Wow, good for you.
And I didn't have any weird headaches, and I started sleeping better. And so I miss the ritual.
Yeah.
But
there's always cider. No, I'm just kidding.
There's always cider.
All right, let's see. New York or LA? Or Chicago, if you could pick a big city.
A big city to visit would probably be New York, but just for like 2 days. Like I'm like when it comes to big cities, I'm like, we're here, got it, let's go.
Oh my gosh. Well, my wheel didn't get a spin tonight, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter because you know what was on there that I was hoping it would land on anyway? It says story time. And I was going to prompt you with, certain story starters, and you kind of just went there anyway. So great job with all of the information you passed along tonight. I mean, there were some really cool little golden little quotes and stuff in there. I almost want to go back and rewatch our time together and like pull them out and make a little, I don't know, summary, because you had some really, really good ones in there and stuff I actually hadn't heard before. So thank you for those. Thank you for your time. We're going to be cut off here in like a half a minute. So I'm saying
okay, well, then
goodbye.
Let me say something. Well, let me say something.
Oh, okay.
You are so impressive. You are the absolute queen rock star of social media. My daily dose every day is going to your Instagram and going, what in the hell is she going to do today? And
so much more to do.
It makes me laugh. It makes me smile. It also gives me stuff to help me with my coaching too.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Love you and see you soon. Okay, take care.
Love you too. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.